So my guest today is Jason Prall, and I can't wait to speak with him. I just love his philosophy on health. He's just a great guy and brings in just really rich, time-honored information instead of kind of what's a fad in the health space. So welcome, Jason.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you for those kind words.
Yeah, let me give a little bit more about you. So Jason Prall is a health educator, practitioner, author, speaker, and filmmaker. In 2018, his independent research and experience led him to create the Human Longevity Project, a 9-part film series that uncovers the true nature of chronic disease in our modern world. He's currently finishing his first book titled The Longevity Equation, congratulations, as well as his next film series that explores ancient methods of healing mind, body, and soul from indigenous cultures around the world. He is also the host of the upcoming Summit, Immune Resiliency Summit, which starts when?
Starts the 18th.
18th of August, awesome.
Yes.
So super soon on a Tuesday, interesting.
It might be the 19th. Hold on, let me actually check my calendar.
Maybe it's the 17th.
Yes, it's the 19th.
Okay. Okay, awesome. And let me just share. So before we got on, you were talking about, I was saying the fall is coming, and I think some of our casualness that maybe we picked up about COVID is going to ramp up to some fear, as you mentioned, because I actually was quite sick in May. I still think I had COVID, but I didn't have a test that said so. But I can tell you, when you think you might have COVID, you're going to be kind of freaking out because you're going to just be watching all your symptoms way more than if it weren't around. And you were saying to me, you want people to not be in that fear mode. So maybe start us off with just tell us about your goal here and how and why you gathered this information.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about anything that we're afraid of, really the primary essence of fear comes down to the unknown, right? Like when we don't understand something, there's a high degree or high likelihood that we're going to be afraid of it. And there's a number of reasons of why that is, but it's fundamentally part of the fear cycle, which is that we just don't feel like we truly understand something, right? Spiders, sure. Snakes.
They move funny.
Right. There's something that we either we're unaware of, or that there's a pattern of something happening that is creating this fear cycle. In other words, we're living from the past, right? Something that's happened in the past that we believe is actually going to happen again, or is going to consequentially result. And this, we fall in love, the heart gets broken, and therefore we're afraid of love, right? Because we feel like that's going to happen again, right? So it's a very real thing, and fear serves a great purpose in that regard. And to live from fear is just a maladaptive pattern. So fear is a healthy thing, but living from fear and acting from fear is really a maladaptive place. And so that's really what we wanted to bring forth, was information about what's going on, right? Because unfortunately, the media and even social media is just full of chaos. There's truths, there's a lot of disinformation, a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion, and we're hoping to cut through that in a way that was going to be a little bit grounded, right? So what are we going through right now? What is sickness? What is the immune system? Can we boost the immune system? Do we want to boost the immune system? Perhaps we want to downregulate the immune system. Perhaps there's certain things that we want to do to balance or to create a more intelligent or precise immune response, right? And then how do we go about doing that, right? What is it? Can we just pop vitamin C? Do we take hydroxychloroquine? What is it? There's all these things floating around out there. And fundamentally, unfortunately, what we don't see is a lot of lifestyle information, a lot of lifestyle tips to remain healthy, or to help build a resilient system, right? To become anti-fragile, right? And this idea of anti-fragility comes from this fundamental perspective that I can take a beating, right? Both physically, mentally, emotionally, that we can take on something, that we can overcome whatever comes at us. Because right, in life, this is just a part of it, right? We're going to face challenges. We are going to go through pains. The question is do we have the capacity to move through that And can we take on these pains without taking on additional suffering, right? To dwell on suffering is a difference than taking on pain and the ability to handle pain. And so that's really what we were trying to explore with this, was the mechanics, right? The sort of mechanistic approach of the body and what's happening and what it is when we talk about the immune system and to be healthy and to fight something off. What is it that we're fighting off? What is a virus? Right? Fundamental questions that, to be honest, aren't actually addressed in science. There is no real definition of what a virus is. And like it or not, nobody's ever isolated a virus outside of tissue. Ever.
Because it has to be in a solution, or why?
It's always come with basically the host tissue.
True.
So we've never really isolated it. And so there's just a lot of questions, and I'm not really making any conclusions with that statement, except to say that there's still a lot of debate in the scientific community about what a virus is. Do they even exist? Perhaps they're just exosomes. What is the difference between an exosome and a virus? And really, does it matter, right? So these are all scientific questions at a deep level. But for Joe Blow, for the guy at home or the gal at home, that's really not even that important. The important thing is how do I deal with it? What do I do to keep myself healthy, right? So that's really what we wanted to explore fundamentally and practically, while also sort of exploring some of these ideas, because I think even with that exploration and giving a little bit of a better framework for how to understand these things, the fear tends to subside. In other words, we provide a landscape, we provide a map. And once we have this map, then it's a little bit more clear. Even though there's not hard, definitive answers, we can still feel like we have an understanding of the landscape and the map that we're playing in, right? So it gives us a better grip on the reality and what we can do about our present condition.
Yeah, and everything you just said, I would say like 99.9 of it is not being discussed like on any platforms, and it's getting so frustrating, and it's talking about fear and all the different things like we can fear right now. It's like now us practitioners have to fear what we say on Facebook, and it can be removed and stuff. So we fell into some of that. We are getting some of our ads removed and blocked and stuff. But lately, I like when I wrote the copy for your interview, and I did a Facebook Live myself last week. I'm frustrated, like everyone. I'm frustrated with this whole situation we're in. I'm sick of just hearing about masks and social distancing again and again and again. I'm like, how has so much time passed and we don't hear anything on bigger media about other ways to handle this, like at all? Like, if we just gave everybody in the country a bunch of vitamin D, that's pretty cheap and that would help. Like, there's so many things we could talk about, and we aren't talking about any of it. And so I think it's great we're having this conversation. Again, it's not really that aggressive. We're just talking about how the body works, how to bring up your energy, how to, I'm assuming, because I know your content, like it's very holistic. It's not, based in so much minutia. So I really love it.
Yeah, we try to hit on things from a lot of different levels, right? So we go ultra practical, like what is it that I can do to create a resilient system such that if I were to become ill in any way, that my body can take it and I can move through it, right? Because that's really the fundamental practical nuts and bolts, right? Like that's what we want to know. Then the other angle that we wanted to address was kind of the functional medicine stuff, right? The mechanistic approach. What's happening in the body? Where does this occur? How does the immune system work? And what are some of the things that influence the various immune components, right? Like what is that stuff, right? Whether it's the gut immune system, whether it's the cellular immune defense, whether it's systemic detoxification, the lymphatic system. There's so many things, mechanistically that we can talk about, and just and looking over that helps us gain a little bit better footing for what's happening, right? So that gives us a better understanding. And then the other layer that we wanted to address is is this whole thing. What is disease? What is a virus? Do we even get sick, right? We have one of the speakers, Dr. Melissa Sell, who most people probably haven't heard of, but she talks about, her framework is coming from the framework of Germanic New Medicine. And this is a radically different framework. And it has a different underpinning to describe what it is to be sick and what it is to be healing. And so it doesn't believe in viruses. It doesn't even believe in, it believes that that framework has a viewpoint such that the body's always going through these cycles of this sort of crisis phase and a healing phase. And so, and that's all it is. And so, and our goal was not to say, this is what's true. This is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But we wanted to present this as a very interesting framework from which to think about this in a different way. And perhaps we can take some ideas and concepts from that and couple it with something else, right? So it's not an either or, and we're not really presenting what we believe is the truth. I wanted to pull in a variety of different speakers that take a different viewpoint on this, right? We have Kelly Brogan talking about more of the psychosomatic, the emotional component, something like fear itself. You know, that emotion can actually increase our likelihood of going through a healing crisis or this sort of sickness, that is this thing that we call sick, right? It might make us sick, quote unquote. So how does that work, and what's going on there, right? So this is the thing that I've learned over the years, is that there's so many layers of truth here, right? There are like nuts and bolts things that can create this illness, if we want to call it, or sickness in the body, right? These things like toxins and hormone imbalances, right? I mean, this is your world, right? You know this stuff to the T. And this is real, right? If we have these chemicals, these metals, these things in our environment, it's horrific, and it can make us very, very ill. And so there's a real thing that we want to do to help clear those things, improve detoxification, balance the system on that level. And there's very real aspects of emotional causes of illness. And we see this with emotional trauma from childhood. We see this in developmental traumas. We see this with PTSD and all kinds of things. There's a variety of mechanisms that have been pointed to and have been elucidated by a lot of the scientific literature that show how much of a contributor that is to being ill. You know, so there's a lot of things going on, and simply being out of balance with the seasons, out of balance with your circadian rhythm, right? The daily cycle. These are the things that make us ill. And so the question I have is always, where can things get out of balance, and how can I bring them back into balance? And that can be in a variety of arenas. And so that's really what we want to explore, is all the various layers and the sort of nested truths to all of these things. And there's a lot to them. And it's not to say that everybody needs to know all of them, but for many of us, if we're stuck, you know, we can't lose weight, or we've got digestive issues or skin issues or hormonal imbalances or whatever the case may be, thyroid issues, we generally have covered a number of areas, but we're missing something, right? There's something that we're missing. Absolutely. And so what we want to do is we want to cover all of these topics such that we can point to perhaps something that you're missing, right? Like, what is it that you might be overlooking or underplaying? And perhaps that is sort of the underlying piece that's going to unlock things for you. So there's so many areas to cover, and they all play a role in not only the chronic state of health or disease, but also the seasonal and sort of cyclical illnesses that we might go through each year.
I think that's really interesting, that theory about, we just go through these crises and purging. It's like nothing I really ever thought about before, but it makes a ton of sense. And even emotionally, I think we can go through that, or spiritually, right? And that's something you've studied a lot, where I was just talking to one of my coaches recently, and he's talking about the state of the world, and kind of it's all a purge right now. And we got into my topic on toxic mold, and it's similar, right? Like, all the chaos it creates in your body, in your life, turns everything upside down. And what you're going to get afterwards is something completely different, which is the gift of it all. So interesting to think that we are all going through that in different cycles in life.
Yeah, and really it's sort of shifting the lens through which we look at what's happening. If I'm sick and I have the seasonal cold or flu, one framework says that I caught this bug and the bug is making me ill, right? That is sort of the traditional Western viewpoint. But look, we understand a ton about the microbiome. Now we're well into 30 years, 40 years of intense research on microbiome, on the microbiota, how it works in our gut, and to be honest, actually all throughout our body, on our skin and our eyes and our brain. We have microbes everywhere. And these microbes aren't just bacteria, right? They are sort of viruses, they are parasites, they are fungi and mold, they're everything. And they work in an ecosystem, right? It's an ecosystem and it's a balance. And based on the inputs, right? Whether you have an abundance of mold that's coming from the environment, whether you have chemicals and metals in your system, whether you've got imbalances from the nutrition standpoint, you're fundamentally lacking certain nutrients or minerals, or electromagnetic environment, whatever your environmental inputs are, that's going to dictate the balance of the body, right? And the body, through its amazing wisdom, is always going to be seeking homeostasis, balance. And this balance and homeostasis is based on these rhythms, right? So homeostasis at night when you're sleeping is very, very different than homeostasis at noon in the middle of the day, when digestion's really ramping up, your alertness is there, so it's a very, very different hormonal system. It's very, very different neurotransmitters. Everything in the body is very different, right? So homeostasis is not this stationary thing. It is actually dynamic. And so the body's always seeking dynamic balance. And no matter what's happening, it's always going to try to do that. So that's a different way to look at it. So if I take the microbiota view, where really there is no two microbiomes of two people that are the same, right? They're all different, and yet they're all capable of achieving balance and health. It's not like we can map out this microbiome sort of map and say this is perfection. It doesn't work like that. Perfection is different, based on the environment, right? So somebody that lives in the plains of Africa is going to be very, very different than somebody that lives in the tundra of Iceland, right? Very, very different microbiota because of the environmental inputs are so, so different. So this is a different way to look at it, such that there is no bad bug. It's just the way that the system is seeking balance and harmony. Here's an example. If I go down to Mexico and I drink the water, I will probably get pretty ill at first, right? There's something in the water, microbes, that my body is not in harmony with. It's not
right. You're not used to
found balance, right? So if I drink the water, I will get violently ill. And there's probably a very good reason, right? These microbes, these things that are there, perhaps could be creating a systemic imbalance and releasing these sort of biotoxins, right? That's very, very real. But yet the people in Mexico can drink this water no problem without being chronically ill or acutely ill. So what's going on? Is it the thing, or is it the system that's out of balance given that?
That's a good point. That's a great example, because we think, oh, don't drink the water, like the water's bad. Well, then how are millions of people drinking water?
Well, and look, Lyme disease is one of these things. It was around this idea of transmission from ticks and mosquitoes and all these things, malaria. All these things have been around for a while, and certain people get sick and certain people actually live with them. Dengue fever, malaria, like we see these things as infectious diseases that once somebody gets it, they're violently ill and it's a problem. But this isn't the case. There's plenty of people that live with these things in harmony, in balance. So the question is why, right? Every year, certain people catch the cold or the flu and certain people don't. Why? What's going on? What is it? Is it that we just happen to be lucky and avoid this virus that's floating around? Or is there just this natural transmission of genetic material, so to speak, that the body either needs to release and purge something to come back into balance, or it doesn't? So these are the questions, right? So I'm not really professing one way or the other, but if we think about things from a different lens, then we can perhaps entertain new ideas, new theories, new possibilities. And through this, we can then take more ownership of our own system and more ownership of our own health, right? So previously, it was thought that bacteria inherently were bad, right? That we needed to sterilize the gut. And then we realized, oh crap, we got that wrong. There's a lot of microbes in the GI tract and the system, right? So it really is moving beyond this idea of germ theory into this idea of terrain theory. And which isn't to say that there's these organisms out there, like mold is a great example. If somebody gets an overabundance of mold in their system and the mycotoxins that mold produces, they get really, really sick for a long time. It can really do some significant damage. I've seen it, I've worked with it. It's a pain and it's tough. It can really take people down. So it's not to discount this, that there's this idea of these other organisms that can really cause harm to the system. It's sort of marrying these two ideas. It's merging these two such that if I create an ecosystem, a terrain that is capable of withstanding an onslaught, then I stand a better chance that my system's able to purge and cleanse and detox and move these things through without it taking such a systemic hold and taking me down, right? So it's a different way to look at this. So it's not it's not an either or, it's an and. We can really marry these ideas of the terrain is really important, and there is an external other organism that can cause me harm if the terrain is not resilient enough.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. I'm going to go open up some of your pages here, and then we can kind of chat about them together. And every time you're talking, I'm like, oh, I want to say something about that. Oh, I want to say that. I'm like, no, it's too much talking. Okay. It's fun to, Okay. And well, one thing I will say is, I love what you're doing, because so many people will say, oh, you got to just tell people what to do, blah, blah, blah. And to me, that's not educating or coaching. That's doing people a disservice. Like, assume people have the intelligence and discernment to go through it themselves and make the best choice for themselves. So I really appreciate that. So here we are. I don't know which page this is. We'll look at the book later, but here's some of your speakers, some of whom I know. Datis Karazian, one of my favorite.
He's had some amazing content, actually. He was looking at the CrossReactivity. So in other words, the antibodies that are produced when one would contract something like SARS-CoV-2, COVID, then you're going to create antibodies that can actually cross-react with tissues in the body and other things. So this is brand new research that he and his sort of mentor, Dr. Aristo Bujdani, are looking at. So there's very interesting things.
Yeah. I saw I'm in one of his Facebook groups, and I saw that they were working on that. And that's sort of a different angle of what we've been talking about, but it's a little bit about the terrain. If maybe autoimmunity or weakness is already existent, and then this virus that enters the body, what kind of chain reaction could it cause is kind of what I got. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong.
And the other thing too that's interesting is and we're seeing this in bearing out in other research too, where if you've gotten quote unquote sick before the seasonal flu, then perhaps you've actually built up antibodies, T-cell immunity to basically ward it off, right?
Okay.
And this is the idea. Like I have a 7-month-old, right? And if I were afraid of every bug, every virus, everything in the environment, then I would want to, as a good parent, protect him against all these things. But my viewpoint, my framework that I'm operating from is I want him to interact with his environment. And of course, babies put everything in their mouth, right? So this actually involves him being in contact with every organism that is in our environment. And if he does that, that is going to educate and train and build up a robust immune and intelligent immune response, such that hopefully he's going to develop these antibodies response and the immune system that's going to be able to ward off whatever might come his way, right? So it's a different viewpoint from sort of putting him in a bubble versus actually exposing him to everything and allowing his immune system to work out, to train.
Yeah, and it's something I've thought about. I have a friend with a baby a little bit older, and they're, she's like, I'm being real careful with the baby. The baby won't interact with people because of COVID. And I'm like, this is like when the baby needs to be interacting with people, and it's her decision. And I think we have to respect everyone's decision in this time in life. But yeah, babies historically, you know, especially historically, were just like sitting in the dirt and all, you know, they really, you know, everyone was holding them. So yeah, and there were animals around, and you know, it was very different. So
well, and research has shown that people that have pets, whether they be farm animals or domestic pets, actually have less allergies, less asthma, and a more intelligent, more robust immune response. So again, it sort of argues for the fact that, you know, and same thing with the Amish, right? There's been a number of studies with the Amish, and their balanced and intelligent immune response is much different than what we see in the West.
Interesting. So this is Kieran Christian. He's one of our favorites that
great.
we bring on for sure. This is Elena, right? Yeah. What
Yes.
does Elena talk about?
She dives into kind of the functional medicine approach,
Okay.
testing autoimmune conditions. So this is something that is worth mentioning, is that it's not just about kind of this current time frame and COVID, and it's not really the focus. I mean, of course, that's worked into the mix because that's so present right now. But this is really about food sensitivities. It's about autoimmunity. It's about creating this resilient system that is capable of determining what to react to and what not to.
Yeah. Okay. This person looks like we could be related. Oh, this is what you talked about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's this like cute little fiery gal who she's totally brilliant. And again, she really brings a different framework, which again, it's actually fairly new to me. I've looked into it a little bit. And I do like a lot of the philosophy behind it.
Okay.
So it's very interesting.
I want to tune in and listen to that. That sounds really interesting. This guy's the EMF. Okay. I know him.
Yep. And one thing too that's worth sharing is that we actually have a number of these presentations are kind of webinar style. So they actually contain visual components. So for the visual learners out there, it's really, really helpful. So Lloyd's got a talk on EMFs that is a visual presentation. Ari does a talk on light and circadian rhythm that is visual. Dr. Melissa Sell does Germanic New Medicine, which is a sort of PowerPoint style presentation. Christine Schaffner does detoxification and system-wide clearance. So that's a visual webinar style. So there's a lot of really deep content that honestly is, I mean, it's really high level, to be honest with you. It's really high level.
Well, I know my audience loves that. And I know from hosting my own events that people love that. You know, they don't want to be talked down to, they want details. So, you know, they eat it up. So that's great. If you're more of a reader, you're going to get a book right off the bat. I'm sure later, can you buy transcripts later too, if you want?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yep. So you can sign up here. You probably get the book no matter which page you sign up on, right?
It's actually just this page is the ebook.
This page. Okay,
yep.
Good
so
to know.
If you want the ebook, definitely sign up on this one. I
think that's the one I put in the Facebook, and I put it as the second one in the webinar chat. So we're good to go on that. Awesome. Any questions from our live audience, or Jason, other points you want to share?
Let me think. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, autoimmunity is such a big one, right? That so many people are dealing with. And so we talk a lot about that. Datis talks about that. And it really is down to something called oral tolerance, right? The ability for the body to be able to determine what to react to and what not to. And if we're reacting to our own tissues, if we're reacting to the foods that we're eating, then there's actually mechanisms that have been understood now that allow us to understand what's happening, why we're losing this tolerance to chemicals, to foods, to our own body, and how to restore that. So
cool. Yeah, I send some clients that his link sometimes. I think he developed that term from what I know, and you don't hear it much, but there's some clients I have, and it's too, that's that quick food sensitivity. Like if you feel like, I just have to look at an avocado to react to it, and that's the oral tolerance. Like it's so quick like that. So it's really interesting. So I'll tune into that one too. I know a point I wanted to bring up before we close is around age and resiliency and immunity. So in my fear mode in early COVID, I studied super hard. That was sort of the mode I went into of like studying everything about, nutrients and COVID and all this stuff. It was really great and fascinating. And I am of the opinion that even if you're older, over 65, whatever, like there's still quite a few tools in your toolbox for immunity. However, that's also the group that I feel a little, almost irresponsible to say to. Like, my parents are in their 70s, and, they generally try to take care of their health, but they're also not totally resilient. So I want to respect not exposing them to things. So I wonder if you could just speak to, and you've studied longevity, right? You've interviewed people all over the world. Like, tell us more about, as we age, how can we stay resilient?
Yeah, so there's two aspects here, and this actually speaks to any age, but particularly to that demographic that you're speaking to. As we get older, or as we wear down, right? That's just the reality of getting older, is that we all get older.
There's some reality to it, yeah. We're not immortal.
We all die, and there's an acceptance to that I think is really, really important. The more we deny that reality, the more we live from fear, and we're trying to prevent something that's so natural. So I just want to acknowledge that I understand both sides, but I think the more that we can accept that and just rest into that reality, I think the easier life gets in general. But as we degrade, as we lose our vitality, we tend to need to rely more on the allopathic approaches, right? Like, in other words, if I get sick, I need to take something, I need to treat, right? And that's where Western medicine and complementary and functional medicine really, really comes in. And there's a lot of great things that we can do, right? On the sort of more pharmaceutical side, you have the hydroxychloroquine, the Z-Pak. It's actually shown to be fairly effective. And then on the more natural side, right, we can actually take zinc, we can actually take vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin K2.
Melatonin, I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things, right, that we can do. Selenium, very, very effective. Glutathione, there's things like
fish
that.
Oil, yeah, there's a long list. Yeah,
so we can take the more allopathic approach, and look, neither of that guarantees anything, right? These are just something that we can do to sort of intervene. And that's really what we tend to need to rely more heavily on, because the reality is that we lose vitality, generally speaking, as we age. In other words, when I work with young kids that have some chronic illness or something, I mean, their level of vitality is insane. Like, they recover and heal so quickly because the vitality is there. So if we're in that older age group, we still want to do the day-to-day lifestyle practices, right? Getting great sleep, having good relationships, having a meaningful or purposeful life, getting outside, exercising enough. And this could be simply walking each day. There's very basic things, eating organic food, et cetera, et cetera. These are all the things that we want to do to create a healthy ecosystem within our mind and body and soul, really. And then, of course, we need to rely more on the treatment side. As we're younger, I find that the best place to focus is not on, if I get sick, what can I take, or what can I take to prevent me from getting sick? Like, that's I think coming from a wrong mindset. That's coming from an allopathic mindset. I think there's a bigger leverage point when we ask ourselves, what can I do? What's out of balance in my life right now, and how can I restore balance? Do I have too much mental and emotional stress in my life? If so, where's it coming from, and how can I actually address it? Am I doing things I love? Am I getting up every day? And perhaps my entire day isn't filled with everything I love, but is there something that gets me up, something I'm excited about the next day? And if not, how can I change that? Like, what fundamentally can I do to create a better day-to-day life? And that may be changing the things that I'm doing and the environment that I'm in, or it may be changing the internal environment, right? And this is a big one, being able to change your emotional state. And this comes down to sort of healing traumas, generally speaking, the childhood traumas and the developmental traumas that all of us have. It's addressing that at a core level so that our nervous system can find balance, harmony, and relax and rest in a state of well-being. So there's fundamental things there. And then the other one is like lifestyle. Like, what can I do in my lifestyle to bring greater source of health and happiness and vitality, right? And getting outside, getting better sleep, again, relationships, play, movement. These are all very, very basic things. And of course, removing toxins and chemicals and metals from our environment and cleaning things up wherever we can. This is a long-term way to really remain healthy and also build up a more resilient and anti-fragile system, such that when something does come at me, right, that's really the way to operate, in my opinion. And so no matter where you're at, you can always take steps to improve that or to move in a better direction, right? So that's the leverage. Like that really is the leverage. And if you look at this particular SARS-CoV-2, we see that it's affecting older people, and it's affecting people with metabolic syndrome or metabolic issues, right? Overweight, obese, diabetes, metabolic conditions, really impacting them. So who's to say that the quote unquote next thing might affect people differently, different groups of people,
True.
right? So
Yeah.
the question is how do I create a system that is capable of withstanding whatever comes, knowing that I don't have a clue what's coming next, right? And this can be all kinds of stressors. It can be mental and emotional stress. Like I could get mold toxicity, right? And get mold infection. I don't know, but how can I create a better system such that I can withstand those things? And that if I do come face to face with them, I'm able to cope with them in a way that is a little bit less, it has less suffering and pain involved.
Yeah, that's really well said. Well, I just signed up for the summit because there's definitely some things I want to tune into. So I just encourage people to do it. Obviously, you've gotten kind of a taste of Jason's work, and it's just like, I love it. I just think you're really a leader in our space, and I mean that sincerely. And I just thank you. Yeah, just keep doing your work, because more and more people need to see it. Even if you just tune into one thing and it just opens you up to one new idea, or share it with like one friend who you think would like be ready to hear it, just kind of spreading the word, because there's such a paradigm like coming down, and there's just like, I don't know, one or two camps that are, wear masks or don't wear masks. That's like all you hear about. And there's so much more out there. So I think we have to have this grassroots effort to like, educate.
This is really about personal responsibility. Like that's it. And I think this is, to your point, I think this is what I'm sort of, I wish we had less of, which is finger pointing and blaming and looking outside of ourselves and casting blame somewhere else. That doesn't really do much, to be honest.
No, nothing.
If I focus on myself, how do I improve my health? How do I improve my mental and emotional state? How do I improve my local environment, meaning my family or perhaps my friends? That's really where my focus has the most impact. Blaming others and pointing at others and what they may or may not be doing correctly doesn't really help me, honestly. Like I understand it. I know, I get it. I get the desire to. I have the same desires as everybody else, right? To point fingers and to do all this outside stuff. But really, the more that I focus on me and how can I improve my inner world, my local environment, my habits, my beliefs, my emotions, my thoughts, that is really where the leverage is. And that's how I can improve my health. That's how I can protect myself against whatever might be coming. And as I age and as my vitality decreases over time, hopefully that will allow me to withstand the things that are coming at me, despite that truth, that reality that I'm going to degrade over time. That's just the way it is. I want to stave that off. I want to, and I want to be able to have a robust response as I age.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I could chat with you forever, but we'll wrap it up. I'm sure you have a lot more work to do on this event coming up. So congratulations on it. Hope that a lot of people tune in. Is there any other site they should, are you on any other place they should follow?
No,
you
I would
just, you're active? Just send them there.
Yeah,
go there.
We've got 5 or 6 days left, and honestly, it's great content. And I want to echo something you said, because it's really, really wise, and I think it's really important. With these things, there's often multiple talks. There's so many talks a lot of times, and I find that there's so many people, they hear one talk and that changes their life. And you don't know which one it is. Like it's always something different. But I hear this so often from both clients and even in our space, right? The health experts, there's always one talk, one person, one seminar that they went to, one book they read that radically shifted their entire the direction of their career, the direction of their life. And so it's profound, and it's not about trying to get the answer necessarily. It's just the answer kind of hits you out of nowhere, whatever it is that you're looking for. So
right. Yeah. And I think it's almost like a synergy, like you'll tune into what you need, or this woman who looks like she could be my cousin. Like, that's an interesting theory. And one thing that I'm hard on myself about is in the healthcare, but I've been through so much chronic illness, is my immunities tend to be weaker in the winter. And if I catch something, I'm kind of judgy on myself. And
sure, I have that too.
Right? Yeah. And then you're like, if you're like, hey, I'm actually supposed to go through these little crises, instead of like, I just totally like, judge, what did I do wrong? That's not healthy either. So you already opened me up to a new idea that, will maybe keep me from, if I have a better attitude, maybe it'll like change my outcome in some way. So.
Yeah, it's funny to think that what we call sick is actually the body healing. Right? The inflammation,
right.
the thing that we feel like crap.
It's true, the fatigue and all the things.
That is the thing, like the elevated temperature, the fever and the inflammation, that's the healing response.
It's true, 100%. Like, the virus cannot do that. That's all your body's reaction to. I like that whole thing too. It's kind of like symbiotic, like, how much is a virus supposed to be part of us and our whole society? It's an interesting
we just
question.
don't know these things. There's so many things that we don't know yet. And so I think opening ourselves up to the possibilities is really, really important. And in so doing, it helps us take responsibility for the things that we can control. And we let the body work its own magic, honestly.
Yeah. Well, thanks for attending, everyone. I think tomorrow we're a little unusual schedule. We actually have Margaret Christensen tomorrow on her non-clinic day. Busy doctor, who's talking about her mold event that's coming up. So I wanted to get both of you guys in. So we get you guys both in this week. So you can stay tuned or come to that tomorrow, same exact time. So thanks, Jason. And thanks to everybody who is on and listening and learning with us. Bye, everybody.